Hi everyone, my name is Wes Watts.
And I'm Savannah Watts, and we are the power couple behind Tiny Watts Solar.
Today, we're up on the roof of a 170 Sprinter, and we're going to show you how to install a cable gland. So these cable glands that came with your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit are actually a pretty universal tool. So you can use these, they're meant to actually pass cables through the decks of sailboats in marine applications, so they are very waterproof. You can use them, of course, to install your solar wire, which we have right here in front of us, positive and negative. Today's application, we're actually installing a cable gland for a light bar that's going to attach on the front of a Tiny Watts roof box. So to get started here, you're going to need some of these tools I have laid out for us. Cable gland, shipped with your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit, as well as the sealant that's shipped with your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit. And then we got spring-loaded snap punch, Sharpie, a couple half-inch push bushings, a Phillips screwdriver, tape measure, paper towels, and some isopropyl alcohol. We have a step bit here, as well as a small 3/32 pilot bit, electrical tape, a drill, and don't forget your safety glasses. That'll get us started. And so all the tools you see here today, we have a link to below. Okay, so first step, we're just gonna wipe down our work surface with some isopropyl alcohol. I'm just gonna take a paper towel here. Just gonna wipe down this whole region here. This will just make sure the adhesive on the back of these cable glands and then even the marine sealant when we're done has a nice clean surface to stick to. Sweet, we'll let that evaporate. Okay, so we got the work surface clean. I'm gonna now unbox our cable gland. Okay, so you'll see inside here, it comes with all these rubber grommets. These are different diameters for different size cable that you're running through your roof. And in today's application, we're gonna use the number 8. So yeah, depending on what size wire you're installing, you can always just match that up with which size diameter rubber grommet you're gonna use. You obviously just want it to be a nice tight seal. For solar wire, again, it's that number 7 grommet. Okay, so in your cable gland, we have a little bag of hardware here. Nice stainless steel fasteners. We'll come back to those in a second. And then we have our gland. So this is actually a 3-part device. We have the gasket, which installs on the roof first, right? This is the waterproof gasket. And then we have the base plate that will sit on top of that gasket with the wire passing through. And then last but not least, this cap will come on and seal this whole thing down, squeezing that rubber grommet into place, creating a nice waterproof seal. When we're all said and done, we like to come back with the life caulk that came in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit, and we'll actually do a perimeter around the outside of the gland just to make sure it's waterproof. No matter what, as is, this is a waterproof connection, but like you see here, we came around the outside when we were all done. It's always good to be extra careful when it comes to waterproofing, so make sure you follow each of these steps. Let's get started. So first step is to locate where you are on the roof. This is a 170 Sprinter van that came with the factory roof tracks right here. And so instead of pulling a measurement off of that, your van may not have come with the factory roof track, and you might have purchased the Tiny Watts roof tracks. I will pull a measurement off this body line because it's universal for all Sprinter vans. So we're gonna take our tape measure. I'm just gonna measure up to this body line. What we're looking for here is there's structural ribs inside the roof. We don't want to drill a hole where one of those ribs are because we're not going to be able to run the wires through. I know that if you measure off this front body line, if you're in the range around 16 inches, there is no structural rib, and we'll show you what that looks like down below. So we got our measurement. Let's go down below and just double check and make sure we're not in the way of that rib. Okay, so we're inside the van, again on that passenger side, and we're checking our measurement with this roof rib above me, making sure we're not hitting this structural rib. So that 16-inch measurement put us right in this opening, and what we're watching out for is these structural roof ribs. That is not where we want to drill our holes. So for example, for the solar wires, positive and negative, that we've already routed, again, we're in that opening space between these two structural ribs. So right there, it's wide open. We know we're not drilling into the structural rib. Okay, so we're back up top. We're gonna just get that measurement off that front body line. Again, I'm gonna take my Sharpie, give myself a little reference point. right at that 16-inch number. So you'll notice I really like to install these cable glands as far outboard, outside of the van, in this roof rib. And why we do that, these are really nice low profile cable gland designs, which actually only stick up off the factory roof 1 inch. And by bringing them all the way to the outside of the van, we know that is the lowest profile location for them to sit. As a reference point, we can take this farthest outboard rib, and we're just going to set this cable gland right next to it. So we want to be in this flat section here. We don't want to be up on this rib. We want to be right next to it, just like that. All right, so I have my 16-inch mark there. I know that we're not going to hit that structural rib down below. And so what I'm going to actually do right now is take my Sharpie and just kind of eyeball the center of this hole. So I'm just going to mark center here. It's kind of a rough location, so as long as we're pretty close to that, we're not going to get into trouble. So we got that marked. Now I'm going to take the spring-loaded center punch and just punch that location. So there's our center punch. It's a really nice tool because it helps when you do drill that first pilot hole. It keeps the drill from walking, and it goes exactly where you want that hole to be. So now we're going to take our drill and our pilot bit. In this case, this is a 3 32nd drill bit, which is just a nice small drill bit. It's always good to drill a small hole first before you drill a giant hole in the roof of your van. So we're going to start with this as our pilot bit. Okay, so before we get started drilling, it's going to be good to grab our safety glasses here because we are going to be dealing with metal shavings. The second thing you want to watch out for with metal shavings is rust. And so it's really good to have an extra set of hands and a vacuum before you start drilling through the roof of the van. Okay, let's get started. Now is a good opportunity to just double check that we're in the right spot. So I'm just going to pop this drill bit out of here, and I'll feed this through by hand while looking from below to make sure we're not near that roof rib and we are actually where we want to be before we drill the bigger hole. Okay, so the next step is going to be to drill our 7/8 inch hole, which will prep us for a 1/2 inch push bushing. But to drill that hole, I really like to use a step bit. These are really nice for drilling through metal because they make a clean hole. Because we want to stop at 7/8, I'm going to take some electrical tape and make a little block. That way I don't go too far. So I'm going to just peel off some tape here. So you can see all the different size holes here. I'm going to actually go to the 7/8 inch step, take my electrical tape, and tape right above that. So we're just going to lay this on here. That's where it says 7/8. I've even marked it with a Sharpie so I can make sure I don't go too far. These step bits actually cut so nice, it's easy to go too far. So I'm just going to wrap this around here, like so. So our favorite step bit is linked below. So we're getting ready to drill. Again, having a vacuum nearby is going to be really nice for this step. And we're just going to get started drilling this hole. So we can do a little test fit with a 1/2 inch push bushing. That's just going to snap into place. So we know we drilled the right size hole. Next step, we're going to switch back to our pilot hole. And what I like to do is actually take this gasket here and use it as a template. And actually, Savannah, if you just want to hold that side down with your finger, keeping those holes open. So I'm going to take a Sharpie, make sure we're centered up on this hole. I'm going to mark all 4 of these outside holes. So we can move that gasket now. And then we'll take our snap punch again. And I'm going to go around to each of these Sharpie marks, make sure I'm right in the middle before I center punch, snap those down. All right. Now we have our hardware. These are the stainless screws that came with your cable gland. And we have a pilot bit. Again, we just want to make sure that that is enough to let the screw pass through, but it's not too much to take away from the thread. This is actually a 3/32 inch drill bit, which is the perfect size for the screws that come in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit. So we're going to take our drill in the vacuum here. We're just going to go around and drill all 4 of these. Okay, so we got all of our holes drilled. Next step's going to be to hit these with some Rustoleum to just make sure we're not going to have to deal with any rust. So we'll actually paint all of the exposed metal that we've just created from drilling these holes. So let's go grab our Rustoleum. We'll come back up and dab some paint on these. Okay, so we got our Rustoleum, and just a quick little pro tip. It's good to take some blue tape and actually stick this underneath the hole. That way, just in case there are some drips, you don't get paint drips all over your nice floor. So we're gonna take some blue tape down below. Just like that. And now we'll take our paint. Anywhere that you see scratches or exposed metal, we're gonna wanna dab this Rustoleum on there to get a nice fresh coat, protective layer. Make sure we don't have any rust. Just like that. We'll give it 15 minutes to dry, and then we'll come back up here and finish the install of the cable gland. All right, so we've let the paint completely dry, and now we're gonna take a 1/2 inch push bushing that came in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit. This is gonna keep that sharp metal edge from cutting into the wire. So we're just gonna snap this into place. All right, so we got that push bushing in there. We're gonna take our foam gasket. We're just gonna peel this off. Okay, so there we go. All right, so we got our foam gasket, and we're just gonna line that up with those pilot holes that we've already drilled. So we can see all 4 pilot holes lined up. And we got our gasket sitting right there, nice and flush. Make sure that gasket has a nice, complete seal. Okay, so next step, we're gonna talk a little bit about how this cable gland works. And so we're gonna take our rubber gasket. For this application, again, we're doing that light bar installation. So we're using the 12-2 marine wire, and that's why we're using this number 8 grommet. But if you were doing the Tiny Watts solar install, we would be using the number 7. So I'm just gonna pop out this rubber grommet, set this aside. And the way this works, pretty simple, but you got your base plate. The wire goes through here and comes out the bottom through the roof. Then we have this rubber grommet that actually goes in the back of that housing, around the wire, of course. And then when this hooks on, this top cap, it hooks on the back and it squeezes that rubber gasket into the smaller diameter hole, which creates a tight seal around the wire. And then you take your screw at the very end. You can use this for any wire going through your roof. You know, for example, we got our solar, positive and negative. Right now we're doing 12-2 marine wire for a light bar, but if you had antennas or other wires that you needed to run through your roof, this is the waterproof way to do it. So we got 12-2, double jacketed, high quality marine wire that we like to use. We got a link to that below. If you got the Tiny Watts roof box, this is the wire that you're gonna wanna use to install an aftermarket light bar. So there is an order of operations. Take our top cap, we're gonna feed that through there. Next, we have the rubber grommet. This is tapered. Easiest way to know you're doing it right is look at the number. You can see the number goes on first. because it is a tapered rubber grommet. So we're looking at the number, we're going to feed that on the wire. Okay. And then the last step is the base plate. We're going to go through the back of that base plate. And you'll see the wire come right out the bottom. That is where it goes through the roof, like so. So we got our wire going through the roof. Base plate gets screwed down. Rubber gasket goes into the back. And then the cap comes in last thing, hooks on there, squeezes everything tight as it clamps down from the top. So let's do it. Top cap on there, rubber grommet. Now I'm going to put the base plate. And the fun part is spooling off about 20 feet of this wire. But the easiest thing to do is have an extra set of hands. So I got Savannah downstairs, and I'm just going to feed this through as I go. So I'm just going to work my way a couple feet at a time, sliding that top cap, rubber grommet, base plate. Feed it through, spool off some more wire. In your Tiny Watts kit with the solar wire, you're going to have the wire pre-terminated for you. And so you're already going to have 25 feet, so you won't be dealing with this big spool. But we're in the shop. We have a spool. You just need enough wire to go back to whatever your power source is. Of course, we got a Tiny Watts power system in this rig, and so we're going to run down the passenger side, get back to where that Tiny Watts kit's going to get installed, and that way we'll be able to provide the power it's going to take to light up this light bar. We got that wire run all the way down, making it back to the Tiny Watts Power Center. And before I cut it off this spool, just give yourself extra. You never want to be short on wire. I got, a couple extra feet right here. I'm just going to come in, cut this. That way I know we got plenty. Bring that light bar wire in. We'll be able to tie off. So, last steps here. We're going to be screwing this down into place with the base plate and the stainless steel hardware that came in our kit. So we're going to take a Phillips handheld screwdriver. You don't want to use a power tool for this. We're going through the sheet metal. It's really good to use hand screwdriver. You can feel when it snugs up. It just needs to be snug. You don't want to use power tools because you can easily strip the screws. So we're going to take one of these stainless screws, hit this base plate, start up front here. Just nice, even pressure, consistent, goes right in, and you'll kind of be able to see it and feel it squeeze as we get tight. So I'm not going to go all the way yet, but I am just going to snug that up. I like going over to the diagonal, doing the next one. Just need these screws to be nice and snug. You can kind of watch the foam gasket squeeze as you get close and feel it. And I'll come back around at the very end and get all of them one last bit. So here's the last one. Set that screw up straight. Okay, so I'm going to come back to our first hole. Give it a nice tighten. I'm going to go diagonal. You can feel it, and you know you're not stripping out these holes. That one's nice and tight already. And then the last one here, perfect. Now, so you see that rubber grommet? We're just going to slide that into the hole, kind of push it into place. And then we have our machine screw close by for when we land this cap. There's 2 tabs on the rear of this base plate that hook into this cap. So as we go there, you can kind of feel those hook in on the back, and then you're just going to press down on the top. And that motion right there creates that waterproof seal around this wire. Now we take our machine screw, drop that in from the top, and as we're holding this top cap in place, just take that Phillips screwdriver and tighten down the top. And just like that, you got a waterproof, low profile cable pass through the roof of your van. So we're essentially pre-wired for when we install Tiny Watt's roof box. And so because that roof box isn't being installed right now, I will throw a couple zip ties around this whip of wire. Make it easier to manage, and of course it'll keep it from flying around on your roof. Okay, so for the last step, we're going to take the marine sealant that was in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit, and we're just going to run perimeter sealant around the outside of this cable gland. So let's open this up. Pop this out the back. So this is a really high quality marine sealant that came in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 kit. It even says it right on here that it can be applied underwater. So this stuff is legit. We're going to open this up. It's got a little seal in there that we'll just want to poke through with a screw, any sort of pointy device. I have a razor knife, so I'm just going to poke through here. Nice and clean. Take a paper towel. Make sure you don't get that everywhere. Second part of this with the razor knife is going to be to cut this nozzle. This nozzle came with the Life sealant. We're going to thread that on there and then take our razor knife and just cut at a 45-degree angle, you know, in this first step of the tip of this. So I'm just going to take that. Always cut away from you. And then we're just going to take this tube, start squeezing it from the bottom up. It's always good to have some paper towels nearby when you are dealing with sealant. But we're ready now to throw a nice perimeter bead around this cable gland. Okay, so to get started here, I'm just going to start on this side and give this a nice squeeze as I pull forward at kind of a consistent speed. I'm going to just switch hands as I make my way around. Now that I've done the front 3 sides, I'm going to just clean my nozzle off here and lift up this wire so I can come in, hit this on that last side. And now we are officially done. What was already waterproof is now even more waterproof. It's always good to give it a little extra when it comes to waterproofing. So we're gonna just let that dry. Again, it said it can be installed underwater. So if it was raining right now and we had to pull our van outside, you could technically do that. We're gonna let this one sit overnight. So we have successfully completed a cable gland install for that light bar. If you were to be doing that cable gland install for your Tiny Watts solar kit, it came with a positive and negative solar wire pre-terminated for you in your Tiny Watts Phase 1 install guide. But again, it is a universal way to do a waterproof pass-through for any type of cable on the roof of your van.